Hello, dear people. Finally back to Hebrew. I said last time, next week, I hope to make another video. I think it's a year and a half ago since I did the introduction. But it doesn't matter. It's still good. We're still continuing, and a lot of other things have been published. So no problem. But I hope you're still with me. So I want to look today at the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, which I think is the most misunderstood letter in the alphabet, in the Hebrew alphabet. I've looked at numerous courses online, little bits, and when they talk about the Alef, they always tend to say, in many cases, the Alef is a silent letter. Okay, that's what I mean with misunderstood. It's only if you're deaf to the sound, if you don't recognize the sound, that it's a silent letter, but it should not be a silent letter. Sometimes it's a silent letter, but most of the time it should not be a silent letter. Let's look at the Aleph first. So this is one of the shapes of the Aleph. Here's another one. Here's another one. So basically it's a line like this. And then you have a little leg on the bottom and one on top. Now, those are printing letters. This, for instance, a letter very similar to what you find in a Torah scroll. But like every alphabet, there are different shapes. Like, let's say, a capital A in English is also different from a small a. So you have what you call script. This is the kind of Aleph that a lot of people who know script will know. This is used nowadays in Israel. It's really an Ashkenazi script originally. So in Israel, they adopted Ashkenazi script, but there's also Sephardi scripts. Okay, this is one of them, and people will know it as Rashi script. That's a misnomer. It means the term is not correct because Rashi never saw this, didn't know the script. It's nothing to do with Rashi. It's a Sephardi script. And the first people who printed the commentary of Rashi next to the Torah, for instance, what they did, they wanted to make a difference. So they printed the text of the Torah in the normal letters, like these, as I showed before. And then the commentary they wanted to do in a less formal script, and they used a letter type, and they used their script. So these printers were Sephardi printers. So they used the script that they knew. But when Ashkenazim started buying these books, they never saw these letters, and they saw that these letters were used for the commentary of Rashi. Rashi, by the way, a medieval commentator. If you don't know. So they thought, ooh, this is the script that's used for Rashi. And they called it Rashi script. But Rashi probably never knew these letters. Yeah. There's also, but this is like a Western Sephardi type of script. Now, there's also here, this is another type of script. It's a more Eastern type of script called Hatsi Kulmus. In any case, doesn't matter. So this is what we stick to for now. Now, all right. I was talking about the Aleph. It's not a silent letter. Here is the alphabet. See, from right to left. Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, etc., etc. The whole alphabet. By the way, there's also a faster way to learn it. Nobody hardly knows it, but it's a very old way. It's called Abgad, Hawaz, Hatti, Kalman, Sa'abaz, Qarshat. All right. That used to be a way children learned it in the Middle East, I believe. Abad, Hawaz, Hatti, Kalman, Sa'abaz, Qarshat. All right, you don't have to know that, but it's fun. It's fun to know. Okay, so all these letters, as I said, are originally consonants. Now, later, some of these letters were adopted for vowels. And when did that happen? That happened in the time before there were vowel signs. Vowel signs were invented. I think I talked about that in the earlier classes more than a year ago, but were invented much later. Let's say 900,000 of the Common Era, around that time. So there were no vowel signs, and so in the beginning, the words were very small, and you couldn't see any vowels. So they found some inscriptions here and there, old inscriptions. Well, let's say Na'ar and Na'ara, which means young man, a young boy, and young girl, um, would be the same because the A at the end is a vowel. Later, they said, okay, Na'ara sounds a bit like a H at the end. So then they started using the H, the hey, for the A at the end. And okay, but the Alef is not really used for a vowel. So nowadays, some of the letters can be used for vowels, but originally they are consonants. So let's say okay, let's go back to probably my last class before. A vowel is an uninterrupted airflow. So let's say it goes on. That's an airflow, and the consonant is the interrupter of the airflow. So if let's say here is ah. Now let's say I interrupted with the b. So that's an interruption of the flow. Yeah. Or la 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 la. The L is a interruption, so that's a consonant. Now, the Aleph is called in linguistic terms, a glottal stop. It means your glottal, where your throat closes and opens. That is also an interruption. So if I have all these A's with these glottal stops with Alephs in between, it would be and that interruption, that is the Aleph. All right. So here we have the little flat line in Hebrew. It's written underneath a letter. That is the sound ah, short ah, not long ah, but ah. But if you just do the ah sound one after the other without letters, it doesn't happen in Hebrew. But let's say theoretically, you'd have ah. If you interrupt all these ahs with glottal stops, and that's really the letter aleph. So here you have them. This is the letter aleph, and these are the glottal stops, and followed by the ah. So you have ah 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 ah. So if you have a good ear, you'll notice that you have to always start. You start with an aleph because technically you can never start with a vowel. Well, that is a law in Semitic languages, but it's also a universal law, even though in English, let's say if you speak English, you don't realize that there is a glottal stop at the beginning of a letter. If I say in or at, I start with the same glottal stop. So in, at, in, at, there you hear it. At, it, in. And Annie ate an apple under an apple tree. So there you hear the alephs. I can also skip the alephs. And Annie ate an apple under an apple tree. And I don't have it, but and Annie ate an apple under an apple tree. There you have the alephs. Now, in English, it doesn't matter if you skip the aleph. And then eat an apple under an apple tree. Nobody will, that's not the problem. However, people who grow up with European languages without realizing the aleph is only there out of necessity. It's not usually, you can say it's all in or it's all in. Well, there you hear it too. But it doesn't change the meaning. I don't know of any case where it changes the meaning. But in Hebrew, it might change the meaning. And if it changes the meaning or not, alephs are there to be pronounced. And unfortunately, people nowadays are so influenced by European languages that they tend to skip the aleph. And that's why I dedicate the whole class to this. Let's say here, there is a word fear or awe or respect. Let's say here, there is a word fear or awe or respect. Also, yir'ah. A lot of people would say yira. That would be yira, but it is yir'ah. Hear the difference? Yira versus yir'ah. Another one, Yisrael versus Yisrael. Yisrael, Yisrael. Yisrael, Yisrael, Yisrael. The second one was the correct one. It's not, I hear people saying Yisrael or Yisrael or Yisrael. Yisrael with an Alef. Okay. And thou shalt love the Lord your God. It really is V'ahavta or V'ahabta. People say V'ahabta. V'ahabta. No, V'ahabta. Don't forget the Alef. Now the Shema is that every good Jew should know by heart. And you start the day with it and you end the day with it. Shema, that last one is not an Aleph, the Shema. But Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Or Echad, if you, okay, whatever. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. You see, the Aleph is very important. By the way, I forgot to say, people who say it's a silent letter, so they sometimes bring up something beautiful, which is, I mean, it's because they don't understand the sound of the Aleph, perhaps, but still their explanation has a beauty. Now, let me say a few things. Every letter in Hebrew has a numerical value. It's also a number. So in Hebrew, for the longest time, we didn't have any numbers. Now we use numbers, but the numbers are adopted from indirectly from Arabic to European. They used European number system, 1, 2, 3, etc. But originally, and still in holy books and Talmud and in Bible and in Tanakh, numbers are traditionally verses and chapters and pages are traditionally numbered with Hebrew letters. Now, the first, that's not so strange, the first letter of the alphabet is number 1, okay? And they say, oh, it's so beautiful because the Aleph is number 1. So it stands for God, who is one. And they say, the Aleph cannot be heard. It's a silent letter, just like God. God cannot be, it's so subtle, it's so spiritual that there is a message, but you cannot really hear it. Now, we people are going to be so spiritual that we are going to hear the Aleph. Let's continue. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. The other day I heard somebody say Israel. A beautiful voice, but Shema Yisrael Adonai Shema Yisrael, not Israel, but Israel. Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. So they skip the Aleph in the Echad, not Adonai Echad, Adonai Echad. Okay, I think I made my point. Let's okay. And then continue. So, in the Shema, there's an alliteration, there's a rhyme. I'm just going to repeat it one more time and then continue with the second verse. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha B'chol levavecha U'v'chol nafshecha U'v'chol me'odecha. Not me'odecha, not me'odecha, me'odecha. But, you see, so in the first line of the Shema, lots of Alefs, and then it continues with 4 words in a row, also with Alefs, and that is like an alliteration that we might not hear anymore so clearly today, but that's part of the beauty of the Hebrew language. Now, if I show you this, you see that here, you hear an Aleph too. But that is a discussion. Some people think it was originally wub wub. And I bought into that too until I saw a manuscript document writing from the Cairo Geniza. Cairo Geniza is let's say a place where they found old writings that were discarded in a synagogue in Cairo. That's why it's called the Cairo Geniza. And there's a lot of stuff and a lot of scrap paper, and basically old letters and poems. A lot of things they found, but they found also somebody, and I think it was a teacher, was explaining to his students how the pronunciation of the Hebrew was. And see, in this 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 letter U, the beginning of a word, strange is a word can never start, I said, with a vowel. And but if I say U, it sounds like if you have the right ear, you so it starts with an Alef. U. So how can it start with an Alef? There is a vowel. So maybe it should be Wu. But this person from the Middle Ages had written for his students. He called that um, a hamza, and a hamza. It's an Arabic term, but a hamza is a glottal stop, but is sometimes written on top of another letter. And so in some writings, you don't see the hamza, but you have to know that it's there. So he was comparing it to that. So it's very interesting that for sure in the Middle Ages, people pronounce it as a glottal stop, as an aleph, basically. So ubcha, but you have to know this might be a bit far for class one, but for this letter here, that is really that is a discussion if that is really the case, if that is sounds as an oo. I think nowadays I do think it does. Good, ladies and gentlemen. I have to say one more thing. Sometimes the aleph is not to be pronounced, and that is sometimes there is no vowel, as in the word as I show you here, bereshit. So bereshit has the word Rosh in it. Rosh also, the word Rosh also doesn't have the Aleph in Rosh, does not have a vowel. So, as I said, the vowels were added in the Middle Ages. And before that, there were no vowels. And as languages always evolve, it's possible that the vowel system reflects the pronunciation that was current in the time that the vowels are introduced. But it's very possible, and it's actually likely, that in older times, let's say the time of the kings, go even further back, time of the judges, go further back, Moses, Abraham, an older Hebrew, that the pronunciation was different, and so linguists believe that once upon a time the Aleph was pronounced. So let's say Rosh would have been before that Rosh, would have before that have been Rush. So Rush became Rosh, became Rosh, became Rosh. Okay, Rosh. Okay, possible, and I think that there's that's very true. You see something similar in Arabic. The word head in Hebrew, Rosh, right? In Arabic, it's Ras. And then, but in many dialects, it's Ras. And so in many dialects, it became Ras, but sometimes Ras, or then this can easily be in Hebrew, As have become O, as has happened in Aramaic also. And Hebrew has had, since the Babylonian exile, quite some bit of influence from Aramaic. We're going to talk about that next time when we talk about the bit. Good. So it's the Aleph. Don't forget, be careful with your Aleph. It's an important matter because if we and when we read the Torah, it's holy text, it's holy scripture. You should be careful. You shouldn't speak and pronounce it as if you're on the street. You should pronounce it with care and dignity and precision. And so the Alephs have to be pronounced if we want to do this correctly. Thank you so much for your attention, and I'm looking forward to next class, and hopefully that won't take 2 years. Thank you so much.